Agenda, please, but before I get that, we need to move, let me see what the final number was, 11.5 up to 11.1. So we'll just, whoever approves it, we're gonna move that up.
And then also 11.3 should come before 11.1 as well.
Yes, and 11.3 will come after. This is getting confusing. We're gonna do 11.5 first. We're going to do 11.3 second, and then we'll go down to 11.1, 11.2, and 11.4. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. And we're going to pull the personnel action report from the consent agenda as there are none. So with all that said, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Great, and a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Okay, motion approved. And we'll move on to, do we have public comment on non-agenda items?
We do not.
Not, okay. I'm going to hold off on reading the spiel unless we get something. And so we'll move on to item 4, patriotic exercise being led by Trustee Mattson.
Here's a find it again, it was here a minute ago.
I'm the same way.
It's right in my agenda. Anyway, 4th of July is coming up as Independence Day. On July 4th, Americans celebrate Independence Day as the day the original 13 colonies declared independence from the British Crown. Actually, the Continental Congress declared independence on July 2nd, 1776. And the American Revolution had already started in April of 1775. The Declaration was actually signed on August 2nd, 1776, and wasn't delivered to Great Britain until November of 1776. July 4th is the date written on the official document, which is stored in the National Archives in Washington, D.C., as well as the original printed copies that were circulated throughout the nation. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
And we have a flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And on to item 5, acknowledgements.
Well, this feels a little redundant. 4th of July is a public school holiday per the California Ed Code section 37220, and also a state holiday per California Government Code 6700. All of the USD offices and campuses are closed.
Great, thank you. And on to communication. I think you said you did have something?
So I just got a couple of clarifying emails because there was some difficulty getting into board chat. And so they were just clarifying our position on the name change, so I sent them the agreed upon letter out to that. So.
Great. Does anyone else have communication? Letters, emails?
From last week.
Me either. Okay. And do we have public comment on agenda items?
No,
We do not. Okay. If we get one, I'll read the spiel.
allergies.
No. I got a cold, that's why I'm wearing it.
It's just allergies.
Okay, we'll move on to reports, and I see we have Don Alameda here.
Well, up already?
You're up first and foremost, statement on general obligation bond funds.
Okay, I want to go over here, please. See
Great.
what I'm looking at. All righty.
It's a touch screen too, so if you want to control.
Okay, so just go up. Let's, you want to click to the first one? Okay, good. Well, as you know, phase 1 is essentially almost done. We're in the building. It's, all the finishes are done. What remains is the boiler still needs to be installed. It's scheduled to be installed right after 4th of July. I and one of them, well, we do phase 2, so only one's gonna come down for now, one that's really in the way. So, the layout is these preschool classrooms are fairly identical, a little bit different. This was intended to be after-school program as well, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't always know all the programming, you know, the building.
Yeah,
And each classroom by the, I forgot the code number, it's not a building code, but the ed code, needs a restroom for all preschools. It doesn't need 2 restrooms for each, so that's one thing we're gonna look into, or one thing we're gonna cut is this, go to the traditional 1 bathroom per classroom rather than 2, to bring down the costs, but there's other things we need to do too. So those are the kind of things that we're just starting to look at to get things back in tune here. Okay. So, what am I looking at? Looking at a roof plan, basically.
Like to see one.
Oh, reflect the ceiling. Yeah, that makes more sense. So this white area is pitched like this, and then the area that's got that pattern is kind of the softened area. So pretty much what you're sitting in right now is going to be similar. It's going to have individual bathrooms and not as many offices, but pretty much same thing. Okay, there's the roof plan. So same thing, metal roofs, and then the flat roof here. That's one, and the flat roof around it. And just those skylights over the, just like the ones over here. So pretty much same ilk. There's elevations, you can see the similarities. And then,
This is the interior view, like inside the.
yeah, and from the play area or from this asphalt corner area. And then that's the east view, and this south from, you know, as if you're standing over there. Okay. And then that's the west view, which you won't ever see quite like that, because it's going to, well actually, no you won't, because it's going to be, there'll be I think 20 feet between the 2 buildings, so I guess you can see that view if you're standing between the 2 buildings. Okay, and those are cross sections to give you an idea of, you know, all you need to do is look at this room and you get what that's supposed to say. Okay. Try to get to the avenue building. There we go. So, well, that's the fun and glossy stuff. We also want to rejigger the admin wing itself. And so this is the old floor plan, and this is the new floor plan. Can't get too much into particulars because it's been a few weeks since I've talked it out with them. But basically, we're going to try to get the main entry here and have a small little covered area that kind of defines this is where you come into school rather than where do I go. And so that will be like the reception area, and that will be the admin desk that, you know, that receives people. And then the principal's back here, think about looking at it. And then this is a conference room, and then I can't remember what those are. But basically,
Staff lounge.
oh, staff lounge. So there's a restroom from the outside and a restroom from the inside for staff.
There's an open office right below the staff.
There's a what?
This is a work.
Meeting space,
Yeah, what is
small group. I think those are for smaller, more intimate office meetings or
The
meeting.
email that Renee sent you today, you
Yeah.
can blow those up and the lettering is really clear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think the intent is to use those as counseling spaces for students.
College
when
group and things.
Yeah.
Because I was confused, 'cause there was a conference room, which is right off the principal's office, and then there was, the staff lounge, and then there was another room as
Oh,
well.
workroom here?
Well, that's the copy
That's the
room,
copy
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
copy
yeah,
room,
okay.
then the staff lounge, and then there's a
Open
meeting
office,
room.
it says right there at the base of the screen.
Yeah.
Open office, that's what I didn't, like, what's that difference between an open office and the conference room? Like, why would
That's kind of like the south side of the DO now, where you've got a couple workstations, but they're not private offices.
Mhm.
That's kind of what this is. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4 workstations that are in an open area.
So is that like Joanne and?
Secretaries.
Yeah, yeah.
They would be further, no, that I really think is for the counseling is what we were thinking. in that
Okay,
space.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
And the
then
conference
TP on
room
the
would most
program,
likely be
okay.
used by the principal during the day.
during the day.
Because at
yeah,
nighttime,
IEPs
I was
and that
thinking
sort
they
of
could have an IEP and Parents Club wants to have their meeting. Where would the Parents Club be having their meeting?
thing. We
the
can do the
library?
conference room or the
Conference
library,
room or
yeah.
the library,
Mhm.
or the,
For the multipurpose.
and so when, do staff actually have meetings in their lounge? Or just,
It's usually lunch.
Yeah, it's usually lunch and,
so on an ER day when there's a staff meeting at a site, where do they meet?
they usually rotate classrooms here,
Okay,
so.
so it's just, yeah, because it seemed like there's an extra, I guess at one time of day, you need that extra something, but I just wasn't sure.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a lot of open stage, which is great.
It sounds like you're more in tune on the program than I am.
Really like the traffic flow
Yeah.
for the kids.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then this is, this is the admin area, that's kind of open office as well, behind the counter.
Don, where's the bus loop in relation to that building?
Let's go back to that first one, the site plan. The kind of the top end of the bus loop was kind of in that area.
Okay.
Back to the site plan, couple more. Look that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so the bus loop,
It's that long building, this right here.
this is that, I forgot what the name of that use is, but this is that current driveway.
Mhm,
So
that's
here's the
right.
bus loop here, and pretty much the entry to the admin will be
Oh, great.
right,
And then where are we right now?
you're right,
We're not
right
Jay,
now.
we're, okay, Jay's the
Yeah.
new, could that see? I
Yeah,
was
so
like,
there was, the bus would turn in here and come out here, and people would cross here. This is the main entry to the campus now, at the bottom of, where that reception counter is.
So, not to get in the weeds or anything, but why are we keeping that entrance that is so confusing now?
The upper one.
That right there?
Well, that was-
Oh, that's the entry to the multi-purpose room?
So that's where it's.
Right.
Because we wanna come in there
But if
now,
there,
it's
but if you go back to the other one, that was gonna be my other question, the copy room, it still has a door, so you think you would just wall that? Because it, unless it's a fire thing, like you don't want
Yeah, chances are that door is gonna be
Locked
locked,
all
so
the
the
time.
only entrance is going to be to come in that main
okay,
entrance.
so there's still gonna be that door that, people are gonna still wanna,
There's
just
a little canopy here that really advertises that that's the main entry.
Yeah, I was gonna say the relief down at the bottom that showed, you can see the canopy and you're like, oh, okay, that,
in
Shows
the
you a little
office,
better.
right, I was wondering why there was still a door
Yeah.
at the
So
other
the
end.
bus loop being there too, that helps.
Yeah, because this would have to remain for, fire exit for the multi-purpose room.
Okay.
You can think of more as an exit than an entrance, and it's locked from the outside. So, I think that's all I got for today. We'll right over for questions, some may not be the answer on that one.
Does anyone have questions?
Yeah, we'll go back to that schedule, that was kind of, there's nothing, you just got started with advancement, any hiccups, I would say otherwise.
Kathy?
What is, it's phase two, I mean, are we looking at sometime starting in the next year, or are we looking not till next August?
Yeah, I'm thinking,
I know you don't have
get
to-
into the ESA by this fall. If I need to firm that up with TK, what their thoughts were. We really haven't, but that's it. I mean, we'd like to roll right into phase two as quick as we can, although it's been arduous to get through DSA in any timely manner these days.
So if you had if you could predict the future, when would people be pounding, making noise?
If we're doing like next summer,
Okay,
yeah,
that'd be ideal.
that would be
The
ideal.
most of the noise
Yeah,
done.
yeah. But I need to wrestle down our TK and get into the schedule. I know we've been impacted with a lot of work.
How are we looking for all ed?
Oh, Ed, we haven't had a discussion with about for a while. We really need to see where the dollars are heading for Ed. It's kind of been pushed out.
Right, and this one's going over so far.
Yeah, the intent is not to go over, or a little over.
we're gonna do a new all-head campus.
Oh, I'm sure we are. That's what I was looking here.
Yes, yeah, we're gonna make that happen, just
Great.
that's pie in the sky.
So remind me, what is that fourth extra classroom?
So it'll be for the, after-school program.
Okay,
They
gotcha.
work with the ELOE.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and with that 4,000 came about 1.3 million in
But
addition.
it
So.
came with
Yeah,
dollars.
so you really can't attribute that being the reason we're over, it's just.
It
I'd
is.
be a little bit pessimistic estimating, it's just the cost of things really wasn't adding that.
Okay.
So we might have add an extra bathroom in each classroom, but we're gonna take care of that.
That was a good fun.
Correct, yes.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Don.
All right, well, thank you very much. See you next
Look
time.
at that. Yeah, the sound in here is great. I was worried about the sound.
This is, yeah. Yeah, they've got some physical treatment on those, the tan pad is actually physical.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Don.
Children's seeing calendar.
Okay, next up we have item 8.2, self-report for 2022-23 school year.
So I did both a backwards look and a forwards look, and I got, wrote up some of the highlights to include in the packet. One of the big things that happened this year is that state preschool moved to full inclusion. So previously, Heather Brown in her autism class, she was doing discrete trial training, several urban kids, and they were just coming in and mainstreaming when she was working with them. The research is really clear that our children with disabilities do a lot better the more they're included with their typical developing peers, right? So we've included them. Well, here's the exciting news. The teachers and the staff are reporting to me that we're seeing more progress on goals. Social, emotional is improved, behavior is improved, they're just seeing it's flourishing. So it's doing so well, and what was really interesting is Amy Hansen is our program specialist through Southside, right? Amy is seeing inclusion programs up and down the state. And she was talking to me about the level of our state preschool inclusion program being Barnett. We're one of the top ones in the state. We know someone that moved to Lake County recently who was really impressed with her programs in Fort Bragg. She's 17 from Lake County, so early on in the year, we welcomed a team from Lake County, their SED directors and administrators. They visited our state preschool, they visited our transitional learning center program for the 18 to 22-year-old students. They visited a couple of our STCs. They said, come back. So they're coming back to TLC, they're coming back to the state preschool, and they're building programming in Lake County and using ours as a model to leverage from, which makes me so proud. So, and Amy also was telling me that we go above and beyond the state preschool. We don't see this kind of programming in any part of Mendocino County like we do here. So, hats off to our state preschool team. They're doing phenomenal work with kids. Which is good because our numbers are also really up. So, what's happened post-COVID is in COVID, our referrals sort of dried up. So we turned the fire hose on, and we're getting a ton of referrals from Early Start and from the community, pediatricians' offices, and so our numbers are increasing right now. But that's not unique to Fort Bragg, so that's happening statewide. We're seeing a lot of children post-COVID being referred into SED services. So that's one thing, state preschool. So state preschool was the first thing to move towards inclusion. Next year, I'll walk into Redwood, and I will be announcing that we're moving the K-1-2 special ed classes into an inclusion model. So next year will be community practices, meetings. It will be professional development. It will be taking field trips to go see other inclusion programs. It's happening down in Willis and Ukiah, so we have 2 neighboring districts that are doing it. And then the following year, we will turn our K-1-2 into an inclusion program. So what will happen is those kids will push out, our teachers and staff will push out with them. It increases capacity. So back in the horse and wagon days, when I first started, a lot of times we had our children with IEPs pulled back and instead of teacher be working with them separately. That's not the model we're talking about when we talk inclusion. We're talking universal design for learning. Our students with disabilities will be up, and then our special education and general education teachers will be collaborating and lesson planning and delivering instruction together. And since I go through both programs, I can say that you learn different things as a general education teacher than you do as a special education teacher. It'll increase capacity. And so once we got Redwood done, then we'll move over to Dan Gray. And then we'll give them a year prep, field trip plan, and then we'll move those STCs over. I'm waiting for more guidance from the state for secondary, but we're ready to move on it. And it's sort of a hot topic in the Sacramento right now. So inclusion is a huge, big deal. Let's see, what we talked about beyond SST. So it's sort of a general education function that ties into special education. So during COVID, I was part of a conference that covered SAFES, which is our platform for writing IEPs, right? It's our web-based platform. They also have something called Beyond SST. So we picked it up and we brought it in. I think I told you guys about that last year, the year before. Not without issues, because we were bringing something new. So everyone's trying to learn to use a new tool. But what that's doing is moving us from, this child's struggling or this child's languishing, to data-based conversations and doing interventions and taking data and seeing what's working. So districts that have used this web-based platform have seen their special education rates go down. We're at 13% for our UNI currently. They've seen that go down, and then they don't get referrals where they assess the student and the student doesn't qualify. They found that went all the way down to 0. So students were either responding to the intervention, or they're truly, we're a child with a disability, we were tracking it, we assessed and qualified. So we're moving in that direction, not without the bumps, there's all the bumps and hiccups along the way. Let's see what else we have in here. Oh, I say this every year, we still don't have any due process violence. Hats off. One of the things our teachers, knock on wood, that could change, but one of the things I feel like our team does really well is work with parents. They're very student-centered, they're very parent-centered, so they don't go into a place where it's adversarial. They're listening, responding, and so far, knock on wood, so far we've held no violence. So here's mine. Next year I'll be able to say 8 to you. Okay, so I've been kind of grumpy lately. And this is why. We're now talking about compliance intervention, monitoring with the California Department of Education. So CDE is using lagged data. So they're using data from when we first returned to campus post-COVID-19. What was happening? The children came back and they hadn't been in school for a long period of time. Not at all. They were doing things like running around and looking, running up. And so there were some suspensions, right? The suspensions rose not too much, but we used them. They were on campus, and they were on campus and they hadn't been in school. And so because of that, we're now in the SIM process, which I'm not worried about, because the difference between this year, like at Redwood, and last year, the behaviors, night and day. Not that we still don't have behaviors, but nothing like we saw following COVID when we first brought them back. So I'm in the midst of that. It's so much fun. That popped on me when I came back to work with no time, and they hadn't figured out how to make any of the platforms work. So I've been expressing that grumpiness lately. Let's see, inclusion, universal design for learning, we're moving that forward. So Joe has met with Kelly Smith, and she's going to be doing universal design for learning PD for our team. I met with our self-director and our self-team, and they're going to bring inclusion into that. They do a week-long courses right before we start. They're bringing it in, and then happily we discovered that Katie Novak, who's like the guru of UL, is a 7-part web-based, like you can just do it virtually. And we've got a team of 15 general education teachers, special education teachers, and administrators that are going to participate in that. We're going to bring that out. So we're moving that forward. That will support us to help every student access instruction and show their learning. So it's going to help all kids. We are having 2 new studies. I'm kind of going through it, but we have 2 new studies, teaching positions. Why? Because I have going up. And what we're trying to do is not load them up all the way. One of the things I was always concerned about is if you load a resource teacher up to 28, as soon as you're getting these on max, we're now limiting their ability to do intervention, to collaborate to case manage that student. And yes, we can case carry, our ed code says you can case carry up to 28, but we're actually be able to do more for kids, better, with a lower caseload. And then hopefully what will happen, and here's probably the real reason, well, one of the real reasons, every spring we're in an overage situation. So we're case carrying too high and running into overages in the spring. So we're gonna add some new positions, bring those caseloads down. Part, because our numbers are going up, in part, trying to improve service delivery. And let's see, can you get through it all? Oh, this one's big. Okay, so remember we had the city academies, and we had our own ED program, and then the county wanted to take it over, and that has exactly been the smoothest thing in the world, and our service delivery's on, it's coming back to us. So the last time we had it, they took it in 1920, we're getting it back this year. So our ED classrooms will be run by us. We found that having the Redwood curtain, as Becky used to call it, in between us and Ukiah, it limited their ability to support. They tried their best. They weren't filling in here to our campuses. The kids weren't as tied into our site admin. So this is a really good move for our kids. And that's sort of the highlights. What's going on, there's a lot more, but that's the highlights.
Do you have any questions, comments?
Seems like it just constantly changes, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
you know,
Maybe
reading.
trying things to find magic wand that makes it work. What do you see as far as the increase as far as kids with Down syndrome, kids with autism?
I think we're seeing a lot falling on the autism spectrum right now. I really do. I think that's continuing. Even though I just saw the literature today, they called it a low incidence disability, meaning we don't see it very frequently, like deaf, blind, but we're still seeing quite a bit in there. We haven't been disproportionate in years past, and this year, I'm not very concerned about it, but this year with the county, so even though the county was running our ED program, on our dashboard, whatever was happening, we were owning, right? So if they were qualifying kids, if they were disproportionately identifying white boys as ED, then that hit our dashboard. It did hit our dashboard. I'm not concerned about the disproportionality, but I'm seeing ED and autism really popping, Jerry. They're continuing to pop.
From 1 to 120 to 1 to 30 in 10 years?
Yeah, our numbers are climbing. And when I talk to the preschool team, and I say, do we have kids that are, can we do it with intervention? Because we really want to be sure that when we put a child on an IEP, that they have disability.
Right.
Because an IEP, you want it if you need it, but it also has a label to it, right? And that label has some pros and cons associated with it. So we don't want to take a child that's struggling because they're learning a second language, or their social and economic background is low. We don't want to say those kids have disabilities if they don't. We want to get to them in intervention. But what their team is telling me, so long story short, what they're telling me is that the kids that we're seeing popping at preschool are pretty severe. So these aren't kids that we waffle on qualifying. These are kids that are clearly qualifying with a significant disability, usually in the form of autism is a really big one right now. It continues to be.
And the MOVAC training, is it just Redwood staff?
It's district-wide. So Mrs. Erickson will be in the training, for example. Mrs. Dearest will be in the training. We have the Crowning Shield from the middle school, so we have Gen Ed, Amstag. It's super exciting. I got really confident. I was emailing Joe and calling Joe. So I'm like, okay, they're all jumping in. We're getting Gen Ed, Special Ed, and Admin. And that's a good start.
That is great.
Yeah, it helps you to get into the fall, so hopefully we can get more signups. Because it's an opportunity to learn the KDO but not have to fly to Southern California and stay in a hotel to do so.
Right.
My only question is the ED coming back, is that happening countywide, or is that just because of us?
Countywide. There are problems with delivery everywhere. So it was a noble idea. And it might work in districts where we're not so rural and remote, but we're so rural and remote that it was just not feasible. They didn't have supports in place. So what I noticed was we had teachers that didn't know how to write or deliver IEPs. They had trouble with instructional delivery. These are some of our most needy kids. They really need site admin and site response. And we've got some tremendous personnel working with them. At our high school, Amanda Durgan is doing incredible work supporting these kids. And she's a treasure, an absolute treasure in the district. So it's going to be great to get them back. And what Amanda had said to me was, oh good, I really wanted to look at big picture learning for our students with ED. I think these kids are not going to be chasing diplomas in college, Carolyn, but chasing work. If we get them interested and dialed in through big picture learning, we'll get better outcomes. And so we're going to start working on moving that direction. Good things to come.
Yeah. And the SST program, so that's all the schools, when you do an SST, now you have this program.
Yeah, so we have beyond SST. So if you have a kid, say back in the day, because I'll always be a teacher first. Back in the day, if I had a kid that was struggling, I might try an intervention at the beginning of the year, like, let's try proximity. I'll put them up in the front of the room where I tend to talk and see if that gets his attention focused. If that doesn't work, we add the kids' games to the platform, and then there's little radio buttons. And so this is good. You can go through, it has a list of interventions that you can do. And then you can add in your own interventions in the fields. And then you can pull data on it. So by the time we're meeting with parents, they've talked to their colleagues, they've met with the parents, they've tried an intervention, taken data, and when the parent comes into that meeting, what they're hearing now is a data-based conversation with the team, and we're not just having that first conversation at the SST, we've already talked to the parent, talked to our colleagues, we're giving them the data. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, that's really great. Well, thank you. Anything else? Thank you, Carolyn. Good news.
And given the case, Carolyn's anniversary, so.
And you celebrate happy anniversary.
It's our 10 years, so I'm hopefully going home to a nice surprise. If not, he's going to be in the doghouse for a little while.
Well, thank you for joining us for
Thank you so much. And even talk to God.
Oh, there you go.
I'm hopefully walking back to a surprise.
I'm sure you will. Thank you. Okay. Oops. So we'll move on to 8.3 superintendent report.
So there are no significant things to report since last week's meeting. So,
Imagine.
other than, we'll a little bit later here, I've had some detail for LCAP before, but I'll say that then.
Great. And do we have a CSCA report this week?
We do not.
We do not. Or MPDTA? Okay, and any public comment? No. Okay, everybody's on summer break. Okay, we'll go to approval of the agenda consent items.
We pulled that.
Oh, we just pulled the one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we still have a contract, yeah. So, what's that?
There's one contract.
There is a, yep, we pulled personal action report, the consent calendar is provided for agenda items that are routine or non-controversial items on the consent agenda are passed in one motion without discussion. Any item may be pulled or treated. So, may I?
So we're approving the 3 contracts, right? The future learning, Lincoln,
Oh,
and the guy that's going to be a consultant for all day.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, yeah.
That's right. Okay, well, now that we've discussed that, we probably don't need to say contract. So may I have a motion to approve? Move to approve the comments. Thank you. And the second? Thank you. And all in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, motion approved. Okay. Moving on to item 10, oral recommendation for regarding superintendent contract and compensation. I'll go ahead and read that. The superintendent, I hope you can hear me through my muffler here. The superintendent has received an overall positive, better than satisfactory evaluation. Therefore, as provided in his employment contract, I recommend that he receive a 6% increase increase as provided for in his employment contract and is commensurate with the increase approved for all FBOC bargaining units and unrepresented employees. If my recommendation is approved, effective July 1st, 2023, the superintendent's resulting salary for the 2023-24 year will be $177,948. So we're going to move into, we've already discussed it, into what is now item point 11.1, is consideration of possible action regarding changes to superintendent's salary and/or fringe benefits. Do we have any more questions or discussion? May I have a motion?
I move to approve the oral recommendation as stated.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. And roll call, Renee?
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
Trustee Madsen?
Yes.
And President Hall?
Yes.
And motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and now we will move into what is going to now be 11.3, which will be 11.2, the 2023-24 Local Control and Accountability Plan, known as the LCAP.
I apologize for the confusion there. The state is just particular on what order we do these things, because if you were to say, no, we don't approve the LCAP, then the budget would not be approvable. So I did, we did go through and update the summary just a little bit, just to make it look nicer. So it'll be really what we probably direct, I don't know if you've got that up, Renee, there's on that first slide, the summary link.
Well, this one,
Anyway, so we changed from the ugly yellow highlighting that I did. Just changing the font color and just making it, bolded in certain places and that sort of thing. So I think it looks ready for the website and out that way. This will also be the document that we translate, so that our Spanish-speaking population can see that, along with the budget overview for parents is required to be translated as well. It's pretty costly to translate the whole other document, and I don't know if there's a lot of benefit. If we have a parent come to us and request the full thing translated, we'll go seek that out at that point, but this really covers all of the details and the new items as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any
This
comments?
is the three-pager. Three-pager?
is this,
Yes.
Yeah, just three pages.
3 pages, yes. I know there were also some questions at the last meeting just about social emotional learning, so I did reach out to all our site principals and get a little bit more feedback on what they're doing. So from Redwood, we have, there's about 25 to 30 minutes daily of social and emotional learning in classroom. All this is in the PowerPoint that's in the folder. So if you're welcome to take notes too. The staff there are using Second Step and also supplementing with the Mind Up curriculum. Second Step focuses on the SEL as a whole, and Mind Up focuses on how the brain and body respond to emotions. So it's kind of cool to talk about what the amygdala is and what happens when you have an amygdala takeover and that sort of thing. So the counselor also provides some model lessons in the classroom, and then I'll talk about, there's some things that are happening at all sites too, so that's not all that's happening there. But at Dana Gray, we've got Second Step used as well as the SEL curriculum in classroom. In addition, teachers are using community circles as a regular practice. I won't say every day, but it's happening fairly regularly through the week. And the counselor will provide classroom lessons for students in the coming year. The staff is also interested in piloting a new SEL curriculum. So Jamie talked to me about that today. I said, great. They just said, she thinks that Second Step has been around long enough now where some of the teachers are just kind of getting commonplace with it, and they're just not, they don't have quite the vigor for the delivery of it. And I can understand that. It gets boring talking about that same situation for the 5th time or something. So at the middle school, we've got homeroom is scheduled 4 days a week with an SEL focus. Teachers use Second Step, community circles, and SEL lessons that have been created by the counselor to support that. In addition, the counselors meet with groups at lunch, and they're There's the web leaders to provide support, so that where everyone belongs. And they provide the peer support, which is super important at that level. They also piloted this past year an SEL survey that they gave once. They were meant to give it a second time. I think next year we'll actually make it through both, so that we can kind of see students' growth in some of those SEL skills, so we have something to measure. And if that's effective, then hopefully we can bring it out to all the appropriate grade levels within the district. At the high school, we've got Edgenuity used weekly during advisory for the SEL curriculum. Mindfulness lessons are also used. We have the Link crew providing that peer connection for incoming students, but also to support other students if needed. Counselors also provide suicide prevention education as a part of freshman seminar. So that's a big introduction they do there. And lunchtime, they have the intramurals and campus clubs that also support positive SEL. At Alternative Ed, we of course have the small staff and student ratio that really offers that personalized approach. That's a huge SEL piece all into itself. They also use the community circles, and restorative practices are used throughout all the classrooms. Restorative practices are at the other sites as well, but it's really a major focus at the Alt Ed. And then district-wide, as you know, all sites have our counselors who run individual and small group counseling. In addition, we have more intensive counseling with LLMH at all sites, and we have about 40 hours a week of that, so I thought that might, I know you don't always know you see the dollar amount, but not necessarily what the service level is there. And that's 40 hours of direct counseling with students, and then they have some other time built in for their billing and recording and all that stuff. And then for 23-24, we're adding the parent education events, and we want to ensure that parents have some supports to support SEL at home, because that's one of the most common things that the administrators report hearing from parents is, I just don't know what to do. And so we're hoping to have some opportunities for parents to engage in that. I would love to be able to video them and put them up and say, hey, you weren't able to come that night. Here, it's still here, or maybe you came and you wanted to hear that again, or whatever. So I'm hoping that we can get all that integrated so that it just creates a nice little support structure for our parents.
Yeah, well, nice to have the video where they can access anytime.
Yes.
So often they can't show up for the live presentation.
Yep.
Great.
And we are fully, I know that we got a classified email, but are we fully staffed in the counseling department?
We are still short one counselor, and that opening is currently with motion once it's at the middle school. So we're still trying to fill that. So I'm going through some less traditional ways of recruiting. I sent an email out to everybody with a PPS credential that has been on EdJoin in the last 3 months in the state, and showed statewide or Mendocino County as a preference, and said, maybe somebody will email me back that hasn't seen this position yet, but really trying to focus it that way without becoming annoying to people that really just ignore what I'm sending out. So we'll see. I sent that out today, so I'm hoping to hear more back on that.
Okay, no internal candidates.
No interim candidates at this point.
Okay, any other questions?
I just had the dual enrollment immersion program. Doesn't have any money on it. Is that something that is gonna just take a teacher salary and a curriculum? Or what is that looking like?
So for next year, we're
24-25.
just investigating. For 24-25,
Okay.
there'll be some curriculum costs, I would assume, but I don't think there may be a small increase. We haven't negotiated that yet with the union about being bilingual and using that skill. We talked about maybe a small stipend for that or something, but otherwise it'll just be within our normal teacher salaries that we already have encumbered. We have some teachers who are bilingual and have shown an interest already.
Good, because that was
So
always,
we started talking.
this hasn't been the first time it's been mentioned, but it was always difficult to find someone
The
that,
right person to do it, yeah.
well, someone that was bilingual.
Right.
That felt comfortable
Yeah,
in
and we've got
that role.
a couple of teachers who came to me when word sort of got out there, and they said, yes, we're very interested in this, and so I think we can build a cadre of teachers, and
Yeah,
if not, we might be able to grow some of our own.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then a couple other things I was looking at that were mentioned was elective offerings and the hot breakfast offering. Is that something that's gonna be looked at next year? I mean, like investigating like what that may
So
look like.
hot breakfast, should be rolling with it here, I think, right?
The scratch cooking.
Yeah, so they're gonna do scratch cooking. What we did was switch from the breakfast in the classroom time, to they're actually going, the teacher will accompany them in, and we think at Redwood, we can make an argument, those are instructional minutes. We are with breakfast in the classroom, so as long as the teacher's there with them and instructing them on social skills and those things, falls in that same category. But they'll get scratch cooking in the cafeteria. And the cafeteria staff is so happy about being able to offer that. The teachers are very happy about the kids getting stuff that they're not looking at and opening packages.
That they've been eating for the last 180 days.
The kids are not very happy with,
No, I
with
know
some
more
of those
problems in
meals.
the classroom.
For sure.
There's a lot of pluses there.
So the elective offerings, so she kind of mentioned, Carolyn, about big picture going other campuses. Is that something that's curriculum that you do to spread it around, or how does that work? Is that an option for elective? Per se?
We haven't really looked at it for electives necessarily. But one of the things we are looking at right now is, so we had our digital media arts position open. We actually have a person who has applied and we've offered to, who has a business credential. So it doesn't quite fit there, but it fits with other, they can do media applications or software applications and some other things that are similar. But they can also do some of the business side of things, so we're thinking about what are some ways we can expand there. We also have teachers, and they're all qualified to do like an education pathway. So if we could carve out some opportunities for them, so that's what I really want to look at next year, is trying to get the sort of the baseline set for that, so that we could have kind of a cool education pathway, even if it's a small pathway that
Okay, that's cool.
students
So
could
that's
follow
developing.
through. Yes, and try to grow those kind of things. And then I've also been talking to Mr. Triplett around the idea of we might need to look at a schedule shift at some point. And we talked about the idea of adding another period to the day. It's kind of hard because that has to be negotiated, and there's a lot of issues around that. But we may also be able to look at alternate schedules, like a trimester schedule or some things. There's some minor details we would have to work out with that, but I think that would give students quite a number of opportunities to take some of those extra elective classes, and teachers to actually pursue some of those passions that they might have, because they're teaching, they don't have to stick just with that one subject, and that third trimester it gives them a lot of flexibility. So.
Okay. And then my last comment, and I was looking at it as a broad spectrum and the goal 3 of mental health. And it seems like there's so many services offered, and there's so many people doing amazing things, and staff in the community. But the piece that I don't know what's going on as a board member is just as an example, third graders, when my son was in 3rd grade, most of the kids could not jump rope and do jumping jacks at that age. And normally a development of that sort is a 5-year-old. So do we have any data to know, because that affects learning, if they haven't done the left, right brain of doing physical calisthenics, that is telling you where they're at potentially, and some other learning abilities.
Yeah, I'd like to say we had data, but we don't, but that's a good suggestion to.
Well, I'm just curious, because I know
Sure.
that would also in hand help with stress and anxiety if we have, even if it's running around or going for a walk, or just doing jumping jacks that doesn't require equipment. And eating, looking at the health food, because if you're eating and you're moving and you're taking a break from your learning, there's studies that show that play, which would be, because people are getting away from sports.
For sure.
So if you're not athletic, I was never athletic, but I did calisthenics and those kinds of things to keep, zero you out. And so that's a thing that's not very costly.
For sure.
To implement that.
And so here at Redwood this year, we did pilot a PE program with our TVs, where they're recorded lessons from actual PE teachers to show, here's how we're going to play the game, so they could watch it in the classroom, and then they would go outside and actually, all minimal, cones and balls and just normal
Basic.
equipment. So I think that made teachers more comfortable with trying some of those things out, because they're like, I don't have to provide the instruction, I can just go out and help manage and
Right,
make
because I
that
think
piece work.
that is a big, what I'm seeing as a parent, and even being a student myself, that kids are naturally not climbing the trees, they're naturally not doing those things, because at home they're sedentary, they're on a device of some sort, and I feel like that's a huge part of the learning or lack of, because they aren't clearing out their brain, they're not taking that break, even though, and you don't have to be a sportster, but people also are not. I think sports will eventually go away. There's a population, I mean, you don't have to do tryouts, I know in bigger cities you do, but here it seems like it's kind of, the population is less and less interested. So I just feel like getting that, if they're not getting it at home,
Getting a little more here.
yeah.
And I know in working with Blockworks, this year they also brought some dance in here at Redwood.
Movement.
So we talked about extending that into the after-school program next year to make some dance classes and things like that that are kind of happening regularly. There'll be no charge, so hopefully that's not a barrier for parents. And, you know, so I think we're trying to make those kind of opportunities accessible so kids can hopefully put down the screens. And,
Right, well, especially for little kids, because there isn't a PE hour,
Right.
you know, because K5 really doesn't. So they're getting it if the teacher is interested in doing it.
Well, it's a part of, it should be a part of
Curriculum.
teachers' schedules
Right.
each day. It's a requirement in the minutes, so I'll circle back with Lindy and.
Well, I'm just curious if there's any correlation between who could do a jumping jack or jump rope. I mean, it is.
Well, brain research shows that if you, movement and balance and all those things, coordination, all have a huge impact on your brain ability.
And I know I was doing it here at this school as a child, and I was very introverted. It wasn't athletic, and no one taught me to do it. We just were doing those things.
Right.
So you shouldn't have to teach a kid how to do it, it's just they need access to it.
Well, like you said, they're not outside playing like they used to be.
Mm-hmm. So just
So,
work the other side of the brain, and that's not costly.
And to cross the midline and all
Yeah,
those fun
right.
things.
Exactly.
For sure.
okay, anyone else? Okay, may I have a motion to approve 11 point, we renumbered, is that correct? Made this 11.2, local control and accountability plan for 2023-24.
I move to approve the 2023-24 local control and accountability plan.
Thank you, and a second?
Well, second.
Okay, and roll call please?
Trustee Paoli?
Yes.
Trustee Malcolm?
Yes.
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
And Trustee Matheson?
Yes.
And motion carries.
Thank you, Renee. Any public comment?
There is none.
Okay.
Well, thank you for all the extra data in there and all the
Yeah, this was really nice.
follow-up.
Mhm.
It's a lot of good follow-up.
Okay, we are moving on to what is now 11.3, Fort Bragg Unified School District Annual Budget for 23-24 and Budget Reserve Resolution.
So we really went over almost everything. The little chart, there were some very minor adjustments that were made, things that, you know, changed slightly or didn't match in one of the 4 places that they're listed. But essentially, it's mostly what we discussed last week. It seems like a month, it's only 1 week. And then, so also included in this packet is the actual formal document that goes to the state that nobody reads. And because it's not a user-friendly document, but it has all the information in there they need and the things that come back to populate some of our reports later on. And the same multi-year projection with the assumptions that I do separately from the ones that part of the official packet. I included the common message in there, which has already changed a little bit since that came out. And we already know that things are a little bit different than this even. So in August, we'll probably see another minor budget revision that once we get some numbers. And then I anticipate in probably November, once the October tax receipts are all in, that we'll see some other adjustments to what's going on. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we saw a mid-year adjustment to the education funding, unless they just carried it over until the following year. But there's just so much up in the air that we're not, none of this is it's even less concrete than usual. So, and then I added a few little charts for you so you can see where our revenues come from. And when we talk about these programs and the budget that you're most focused on is always the general fund, because that's the operating budget. The others are so self-contained that they don't impact each other, except occasionally if one of them needs a little contribution from somewhere else. But they are so separate that, and this is the bulk of what we do, so this is the one we focus on. So these are our general fund revenues, you can see those, and then the next one breaks down some of the expenditures by objects, which is how you're used to seeing them in your financial statements. So classified certificated salaries, management salaries, benefits, and those kinds of categories. And you can see where that goes. And then there's another one that's by function, and our account codes have, I think there's 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 segments, and the object is one of them, and that's the salaries, benefits, books, supplies. And then there's one further down the string called the function, and that's what this last one is, and it's instruction-related services, pupil services. So it breaks the objects down a little farther into what the function of them is, not just what they are. So that's kind of an interesting breakdown as well. And then the last one is I broke down and again, this is the general fund balance, and you can see that the large portion of it is completely restricted. There's the reserve for economic uncertainty there. There's a little teeny sliver that's non-spendable, and that's basically our revolving cash account and a small amount of inventory that we carry. And then the unassigned portion is in the dark blue section in the upper left there. So I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to consider. It's a positive certification. We already have our letter back on the public disclosure packet from the county, and they've accepted it. So the numbers that are in here are reflected in there, so that will be, my assumption is that they will also then accept this without any qualms. So did you have any other questions or anything in there that was different than you?
The one thing I forgot to ask last time, do we have any cafeteria nutrition?
Contribution to that? Nope.
And
that would have been, so on the multi-year with assumptions that I do, down towards the bottom of that, the unrestricted section of that is where any of those transfers out, that would be transfers out. And so no, we don't have any, because we did get some extra federal money from the COVID things, and Pilar is amazing at trying to keep things under control. So we probably have another, I'm assuming next year we will probably still not have a contribution. After that, we might start running out of some of those things and have to, but like I said, Pilar's done an amazing job, keeping costs under control as much as she can.
Okay.
Some things are obviously out of her control, but the state coming through with the money for universal meals has been huge.
Help.
Yeah.
And so that's,
So now my grocery bill's not.
No.
right, exactly.
It's on the general hit in the general fund.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the only other question, which I don't know, it says page 52, but now I'm wondering if it was the LCAP. Transportation, it said 549,000.
Yes,
218, is that for the,
that's the general fund contribution
so that
to
is
the transportation.
for the whole year, for the type of busing we're doing right now?
Yes,
So it's modified and, wow.
transportation costs are very high.
Well, it's just good for people to know, like,
Right.
what we're offering may not feel like enough for families, but that's.
We are starting next year, we're getting a little bit more. They're covering,
Allotment.
they're saying that they're hoping to cover 60% of what your costs are, so we're still going to be contributing 40%.
So
Yeah,
when we
I
get
think-
the electric buses, that will make,
That's going to be interesting. Fuel costs will go down, but electricity costs will go up. So I don't know how, I
Tires.
know with my electric car, the electricity it uses is a whole lot cheaper than the gas we would be using for the same number of miles driven. So hopefully it will be the same with the buses. The other maintenance things, there's no diesel engine,
right.
so
There's no oil
parts
change.
and everything else. Tires are gonna be a little more frequently
Mhm.
used. But other than that, you would expect overall the cost to go down.
Yeah, I'd be curious.
So,
We
yeah,
have that-
it'll
we have that
be, it'll
number.
be very interesting to see, but
Yeah.
that's my expectation is they'll be going to
And then two other things that I wrote down. Unemployment insurance was negative 89%, which was interesting that it went down.
went down.
So I don't know why it was so up.
Because there was one year where the state jacked it up by like 4 times.
Oh, because it's a mandated rate.
Yeah, and
Gotcha.
then it's been dropping
Okay,
back to
got it.
where
Nothing-
it should be, no,
Got it.
nothing exciting.
And then the last one was there was an increase, 1,100% increase in the Code 65 equipment. So what does
Yes.
that mean?
So that means that we, and it's not just equipment, well, some of it's equipment, some of it's other capital
Replacement, it
expenditures,
says,
large,
equipment replacement.
large capital expenditures. We have been doing between, now I'm forgetting what they were, but
A combination of things.
a combination of things, equipment improvements, building improvements. Why am I forgetting?
Well, there was
We've
a
gotten
new
some
roof.
grants for some equipment, Pilar got some grants for some equipment that actually went through the general fund.
Okay, so it could be that.
You know, freezer and refrigerator replacements,
Mm.
those cost a lot. And there was something else big that we got. What else, what am I forgetting?
Well, that makes sense, because that's.
We generally
what
don't
learned.
spend very much on
Well,
capital
and
expenditures.
what you budgeted, that's why it went up, 1,100%.
Right, so the budget is because we're gonna be spending a lot of the big
Mhm.
dollars this coming year on
Yeah.
those things. So yes, the budget over this year's projection is gonna be way high.
Right.
And earlier this year's projection was high because we were hoping to spend it this year.
Right,
So we just
gotcha.
kind of shifting it down
Yeah.
to next year. So that's why the anticipated amount for this year has gone down and the anticipated amount for next year has gone way up.
So that's what I learned in MIG. Look at the huge percentages and ask questions.
So is that where things like school bands come out of?
Oh, yeah, the projector system at the middle school was part of that. We haven't paid for the wiring upgrades yet, so that's in next year's budget. And, yeah, so it moves around. I think I originally had that in this year, and again, it didn't get spent quite yet, so we'll be paying for that probably in August.
And school bands, things like that come out of there too?
Yes, those are in there this year, yes, we paid for those. Yep.
Thank you.
So while we're talking about school buses, I was out on my morning jaunts and I saw a whole line of school buses pull up in front of the middle school. And to think that some of those buses are gonna just be destroyed to get electric buses just is a crying shame that some school district somewhere doesn't need a really good used bus, even if we just gave it to them.
We're not allowed.
That is just pig-headed.
It's a part of the grant, we actually have to send them pictures of the holes that go through the block when they
Really?
drill holes to make them immobile.
Who decides these things? That's
Well, that
just
doesn't even seem
criminal.
environmentally,
No.
I guess someone wants the metal.
Well, and I guess the part that really hurts me is the bus will look very similar. The new bus we get looks almost exactly the same. Why couldn't it have been retrofit?
Take the motor out,
Take the
put
motor
the
out,
battery
and
in.
put the- I mean, the frame and all that other stuff is
Right.
It'll create
virtually the
jobs.
same.
Right,
So,
like
it's
such
frustrating.
a waste.
It really is.
But the metal of the bus will be used in another form.
It'll be recycled in some way, but
It's a big business.
it is,
It's probably part of it. Someone must have scratched someone's back.
I'm
right?
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. May I have a motion?
I move to approve the annual budget for 23-24 and budget reserve resolution. Do we need to?
So it's not a real resolution,
But it's
it's
just
a
a-
form that's in the back of the packet, I think I sent it to you separately,
Mhm.
but in the actual packet, it's attached to the back. The state says that if you maintain a reserve higher than the reserve for economic uncertainty, that you have to explain it. There's an exception to that if you have less than 2,500 enrollment. We don't have 2,500
Mhm.
enrollment, but our county office says, we want you to do it anyway.
Okay.
So it basically just says,
For our county.
in case of financial uncertainties moving forward, we feel it's important, blah, 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 blah. And that's just kind of our stock, this is why we're doing it. And it doesn't matter much because we technically don't have to, but
Okay, it's just our
we do it,
county,
we include it.
county obligation.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
So.
thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. And then a roll call, please.
Trustee Fairley?
Yes.
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
Trustee Madsen?
Yes.
Trustee Macleod?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Now, 11.4, Education Protection Account Resolution 2307.
So this is an amount that's rolled into the local control funding formula, the education protection account. It started in, I want to say, 1990s. And it was to help districts maintain their salaries and benefits. And so that is the only thing for which it can be used. So basically what we do is we separate that part of the revenue from the local control funding formula in its own little area, and then we move some of the salaries and benefits from other places to there. And so all that is doing is paying for some salaries and benefits.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Comments? Okay, may I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the item 11.4, the Education Protection Act Resolution 2307.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
And roll call, please.
Trustee Madsen?
Yes.
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
And Trustee Fairley?
Yes.
Trustee Macleod?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And do we have any public comment?
No.
No. Okay, thank you. Let's see, now where am I here? We're down to 11.5, Kudos for Kids After School Program Policies and Procedures 2023-24. Before you say that, thank you very much for dealing with all of this and the moving target that you're presented with every year. And this year seems worse than ever, so you are appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So the Kudos for Kids program, their program procedures, just as a part of the grant that we have, has to be board approved. There's not significant changes other than they've included Flockworks and some of the things that their board would like included, but they're not major changes, minor language change here and there. So otherwise, they're very similar to the ones you've seen before.
I like the logo, powered by Flockworks.
Yes.
We're emotionally invested in this, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's going to be a great partnership, and I'm super excited to see the places we can go with this. I think we can make the most out of that money to have a big impact on our community.
Have they started hiring?
They have, yeah. So they have their, they have their sort of office person who will handle all the HR and all of that piece. So all their HR policies are in place. And they've hired their site folks who are pretty much coming over from the existing site folks.
Yeah.
So I think they're ramping up, and with the pay that they're going to be advertising, I don't think they're going to have any issues with getting folks wanting to stay. I think they're starting at around $21, $22 an hour for
Okay.
folks staying after school.
Mhm. Great.
And where do you find them? Where do you get?
That's the beauty with this, is that it can be our instructional aides. And I said, if you make it worth their time, I bet our instructional aides will want to stay.
But Flockworks, where do they actually have, do they have an office somewhere?
Oh, so they're going to set up in the back of the John Dietrich Center. They've worked with
Oh, gotcha.
the
Good.
clinic to just
Okay.
share that space
Cool
out.
space.
And so they'll have a nice office there that they can use.
Yeah. Oh, very good. Any other questions? Okay, may I have a motion?
I move to approve the Kudos for Kids After School Program Policies and Procedures for 23-24.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
And roll call, please.
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
Trustee Fairley?
Yes.
Trustee Madsen?
Yes.
And Trustee Macleod?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, I think we got all of those, so we're down to information and discussion. And I just had 12.1 board attendance at the AEC conference, which starts at the very end of November, it goes into the first couple of days of December. Scott has gotten us a deal on 3 rooms, and it's within walking distance of Marriott, was it Clancy? I think it was the Clancy. So we can get our rooms reserved, and those can always be canceled, so that's the kind of thing that can wait till the last minute to, I think we have a week, we have to cancel. Registration, we can get the early bird registration, it's cheaper, but if you're not certain that you can go, we could wait and just, I think they go up until a couple of weeks before, it's just a little bit more, but you can't get your money back. And I was the person that had to cancel my first year, and we couldn't get that money back. So, is everybody ready to make a commitment, or if you're not, you can tell us that as well? I know Scott's planning to go.
Yeah, I already sent her an email.
And Jerry, and Diana. And
Yes.
I did check the Fort Wright High School website and the basketball schedule is not up, and
right, and I know those can wait a long time, so would you like us to wait? We can reserve the room and then just wait on the registration.
when's the early bird? I could probably, I haven't did with the October.
Do you want to know?
Maybe it'll ask her in the summer.
You happen to know the early bird registration when it ends for
The
the,
deadline.
I don't.
I don't either, I didn't look at the.
Surprised if it's soon.
No, I would think not till
No,
September or in October.
but I do not know.
Do you think it's?
I can probably, I mean, it's
Talk to
just,
Steve.
I don't see the game or something, but if the kids get back on like one of those really great tournaments that weekend.
If I remember right, that might be the Clear Lake tournament. But you could check in with those folks, they'll know already. So contact your Lake County folks, they'll know if they're having that.
So,
weekend.
And it's only $60 difference.
yeah, it's not,
So it's August 15, it looks like it is the
So it's not a huge.
Okay.
the scheme of things.
So,
And it's like, are they, there's a lot of things, are they doing well, is my son, it's like, do I, I'm not this worthy, my son's, perfect bench, but,
and just to help with that, I did actually just before this meeting get an email from Nicole Anderson that she could do December 2nd at the AEC, so if we could find a space, so instead of the one right before Thanksgiving, that we would move that to December 2nd.
Okay,
So,
excellent, and you're looking at the movie, the
okay, we'll just say I'll go, let's just,
Yeah,
okay.
okay, you're sure, you don't have to.
sorry.
Okay, so then we have to look at rooms,
We'll have to go to the
and Scott would like his own room. And Jerry would like his own room. Joe, that's what you do with your own room. We have unisex bathrooms, but we have, so, I had said I was willing to share, Diana's willing to share, I'm sure you're probably willing to share, but that would be 3 people with 2 beds, which probably.
Seems bizarre.
So,
So we're gonna try to stay out the same place, everybody?
yeah,
And that'll be good.
yeah, we're getting 3 rooms, he's getting an amazing price, because his sister-in-law works there, so it's like $119 a night.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, and I think Marriott is where you guys stayed with me, or I couldn't go. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure.
All I remember is there was,
That's right.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
not fun.
Yeah, well, we don't have a nice.
But I'm moving
Oh,
forward.
maybe it moved. You guys moved your rooms.
I think, yeah.
Anyway, so I guess we'll get 2 rooms for the ladies and we'll figure it out.
We can.
Make sure we have
We
the
don't have
appropriate
joint
beds,
rooms,
so.
so we're.
No, I was thinking we can take turns.
Right.
We're gonna move those,
Whoever snores gets their own room.
That's me.
My
sister told me all the time.
I snore too,
It's the
so.
same thing. Overall.
We're all snoring, we'll be good.
Okay, great, then we have that nailed down. On to board reports, does anyone have anything to share since last Thursday?
I don't think so, yeah, I want to give kudos to the staff for getting getting through another year.
And this one was a rough one.
And just all the extra paperwork, and you could still name out prices and costs, and
been a wonderful first year, so.
Yeah, thank you, you've been a great addition. Okay, and Joe and I have worked out today, and it was Joe and I.
So we got that.
We chatted. That's okay, because we just got chatted actually about having, maybe starting an education.
Oh, you can get back to one last night.
There you go.
So, since it's early and we have a minute, I guess I'm already explaining, are we going to stick to that 3:30? We decided that that's what we're gonna do going into next year too? Or do you want to have a workshop and go over all that?
I don't think we're having a workshop before school starts, unless you guys want to.
I haven't heard of anyone saying it's a bad time.
No, I know that teachers couldn't do it in the morning, but they don't come unless there's something that's directly affecting them and their family, so,
And then did anyone, how did we know about this one? Was there, parents heard on the page, like today, you haven't been getting anyone, but.
no. There wasn't a parent alert,
Parents are on, Facebook.
kind of on the website, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the link is there as well. You don't have to
Right.
You're
request a
saying
link, you just go to the website, click on it.
the Nicole Anderson thing, we might be able to replace one of our workshop days at the AT.
Yes.
Yeah, put it over there.
And is the 23rd sticking?
No, she offered another date for that as well, so that we can move to the first session, because I was an outdoor on that one. So
Do we know that name?
let me pull that up. I didn't do it, because I think I'm gonna.
And then I realized it's really a terrible time to really dig back to my own email inbox like that.
That's about October 21st, is that?
And do, the 23rd?
21st.
So we're replacing,
To replace September 23rd, yes.
yeah, so the first one might be in October 21st.
Friday, Captain Stone will send out an email with all the dates.
I'm sorry.
But now that about the dates ended, my computer, you'll send out any changes to email.
I will. And I'll get Renee to send out invites so that we're got them set. I just didn't want to do that until we had, and get it on the board calendar.
The board meeting weeks, so I think,
And those are just with us, right? That's
Yes.
not with that. And
Yeah.
is admin starting?
And then we'll be doing their processes through ADCO.
Yeah, and will they be starting sooner than that?
They should, yeah, I think our first one is in September.
Okay. Okay. Great. Anything else for advanced learning? Okay, and we have no housekeeping and reminders for this month, except have a wonderful summer. So, may I have a motion to adjourn? Have a second?
I will second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Somebody else to do it.